welcome everyone to our Final Fantasy tier list. We're just doing the numbered games here, but we're going to see how this works out, and this is just a bit of fun. If you have any comments about what's going to be where, stick it in the list. Just myself and Tom this time, because we're the Final Fantasy ones out of the group of 5. The other 3 can go sod themselves.
Cue intro. Just want to explain it to people before we begin. You may notice that some of these games are already in the non-applicable category. This is because between myself and Jack, we haven't played these games, or we played so little of them that we frankly can't give an opinion or a ranking for any of these games. So
wouldn't be fair.
Yeah. I know it's quite sacrilegious because Final Fantasy XIV's in there. I know a lot of it's very, very popular amongst Final Fantasy fans, and those who aren't necessarily Final Fantasy fans, they love playing this game, this MMO. I'm sure I will get around to playing it at some point, but for now it has to go into the non-applicable category, I'm afraid. So, Final Fantasy 1. Yeah, I think overall it's a pretty good game. I mean, I haven't played the original version, but I've enjoyed every version I've played. There's not really much of a story here. The story's very basic.
It's very backloaded because of how they have the technology at the time. Yeah. Because I remember hearing that they basically had to create a new kind of way of programming for how the final cutscene worked. Because this is NES at the time, and it's kind of like. So it's revolutionary that you could have multiple bits of text at the time for what was going on. So yeah, it's kind of like it was a big deal because of things like that, and it really struck a chord with a lot of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of being super honest, it doesn't hold up as well as it should do, but it does get a lot of credit because it's revolutionary basically for its time frame, even with the remake. Kind of doing things for the GBA, kind of fixing it a lot.
Yeah, the original version of this game was a buggy mess. It was literally held together by Blue Tech, like the coding version of Blue Tech. So, I mean, I personally like it. Whenever I do like a marathon, I mean, you can get through this game very quickly if you know what you're doing. You can complete it if you speed run it. I think the quickest I've ever completed this game is around about 4.5 hours in like one sitting. It's very easy to get through. Personally, I find it very easy to get through because I know it very well. So I think personally I would put it in the C category.
Yeah, stick it in the C category, and we can fiddle around with things from there.
Definitely. So C category, Final Fantasy 1. Final Fantasy II, they had huge success with Final Fantasy 1, and instead of trying to copy what they did with Final Fantasy II, they changed virtually everything about it, how you level up. It's very much, for those who haven't played it, you sort of basically in almost every other Final Fantasy game, you battle, you get experience, and you level up. What Final Fantasy II does, it's similar to what Skyrim does. You keep using the same move over and over again, and after
Oblivion with how that works, because it was more, Skyrim made it a little bit more streamlined.
Yes.
Oblivion's where it's anal.
Yeah.
That's what this was. It was anal. That's the problem.
Like if you wanted to level up like fire spell from level 1 to level 2, you had to use that same fire spell like it was something ridiculous, like 1,000 times or something.
It was mental. It was far too hard.
Insane amount of grinding to do in this game. You could literally grind for like 10 hours just outside the first town and break the rest of the game basically. So it was very, very, very easy to break that game, and you can just plow on through for the rest of the game. I will give the game, I'm not a massive fan of this game. I know the re-releases have tried to make it a bit more,
tried to balance it more, didn't they?
Yeah, like the Pixel remaster is based more off the PSP version of the game, which makes it a lot cuts down a fair amount on the grinding. I also appreciate the fact that they tried to make more of a story compared to the first one. This game is miserable, by the way. It's a very bleak Final Fantasy game.
Yes,
People are dying left, right, and center in this game. Final Fantasy II, I don't really have much else to say about it. I would put it in the D category. I don't think it's. I think it gets a little bit too much hate. I understand why people don't like it, but I don't think it's like E category bad. I would probably put it in the D category.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. It's not. It's definitely not as good as Final Fantasy One, but it's not. It's not bad.
Final Fantasy III. This to me is a better version of Final Fantasy One. I would argue.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's an improved version of Final Fantasy One because it's kind of again for this one I didn't play the original, but I played the 3DS version of this.
Yeah, I've played the 3DS version and the Pixel Remaster version of this game. Once again, I have not played the original NES version, but to me, this is by far the best game. I wouldn't say by far because I quite like Final Fantasy One, but I think overall it is the best of the original trilogy. I think there's also like 3 different world maps in this game. There's the map in the sky. There's the map on the
World of Light, World of Dark, and something else. So
like the final boss of this game. It's like a nothing villain. It really is, and
it is Cloud of Darkness or something like that because it's like you got your main characters are the 4 heroes of light who are going against the wall. Who are going against darkness because apparently darkness used to be in darkness comes up every now and again to stop light and vice versa. It's a whole cycle, which is a nice idea and quite interesting for that sort of time because it's again talking for the time period. Games that sort of story hadn't been done, so it's an interesting idea. So I'll give it credit for that. But at the same time,
but they expanded, the job classes. There's more job
system, class system. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but for what they managed to do on the NES, great game. I would probably put it in the C rank in front of Final Fantasy One.
I provisionally put it in B tier.
Okay then.
Provisionally in B tier, it can be moved down. It will see where we go.
Okay, Final Fantasy IV. This is one of my personal favorites in the entire franchise. I love this game. I've completed it God knows how many times. I've played, I think, almost every version of it. Cecil's storyline, who's the main character in this game, when he first becomes a paladin, is such a great moment. The soundtrack is amazing. I think Nobuo Uematsu did an amazing job with the soundtrack in this game. Even when you listen to the original Super Nintendo version, the music still sounds really big and grand.
Yeah.
So I love this game. I don't know if it would quite go in the S category for me, but I would definitely stick it in the A category. I really like this game.
I'm going to petition it to go into the S category on the basis that everything you said is absolutely correct, and I completely agree. But then there's an extra level of gameplay and story integration that this game does. Little things like when you got Sid as a character, I'm pretty sure it's Sid.
Is it Teller? Is it Teller?
It might be Teller.
Yeah, I can't remember. That's the mage Teller.
It might be Teller. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I got it. But the point is, because he's an old man and he's getting older,
I think it's Teller.
Yeah. His stats go up for certain things that you use him for, but other stats are going down. It's those little things as gameplay and story integration that work really, really well.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I think that kind of puts it it pushes it just that little bit beyond, If you're definitely right. It's definitely A tier, but I think that little bit of gameplay and story integration pushes it above, and that's the sort of thing that Final Fantasy's been really good at gameplay and story integration. It's like the little things that you do, the extra little things that you do that kind of make the stories work.
Yeah.
And I will sing its praises a lot more in a game or two, but yeah, I would petition this for S tier.
I'm happy for Final Fantasy IV to go in the S rank for now, but if it has to
provisionally S rank, yeah, okay.
Yeah, provisionally S rank, okay. Right, Final Fantasy V. This, I can't believe it took me so long to play this game. The first time I played it was a long time ago. I don't know. I got around about 5 hours in, and I really didn't like it. It did not click with me whatsoever. I then bought the Pixel Remaster version, and I ended up loving it. Like, I couldn't stop playing it. And it's simply because of the job system in this game. It's a very comedic Final Fantasy because a lot of, at the time they thought Final Fantasy IV was a bit too serious, so they took a slightly more comedic, laid-back approach to the storyline.
Choco, yeah.
And the storyline overall didn't really do anything for me. What I loved is all the different job classes, the way you can mix and match. So you can be like a black mage who can be very good with, I don't know, beating the crap out of somebody as a monk, the way you can, swap all the abilities around. And if you build up enough abilities, you can then put it all into the freelancer job system, and you just become unstoppable. I just think that side of it is enough to... I would put it in the B rank. I would definitely put it above Final Fantasy 3. To me, it's like they took everything that worked in Final Fantasy 1 and 3, and at least with the job system, and expanded it even further.
Definitely B rank, because this had the proto-Aerith death in it. With Galuf.
His daughter inherits all of his abilities after that.
Yeah. Well, it's because they can't have you be a party member, sure.
Yeah. But no, it's quite touching from a story point of view, though.
From how the story works.
Yeah.
This was good. I don't think this is the first time a story member has died and not come back.
No.
But at the same time, this one felt more. You feel for this one a bit more.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely B rank. Not quite A rank because it's just one scene, but at the same time, yeah, no.
I also find it a very challenging Final Fantasy as well. I died quite a lot playing through this game. I don't want to say it's like Dark Souls hard, but it's definitely the hardest Final Fantasy game I would say of the Nintendo era.
I think that's because of the nature of how they did games back then, rather than an actual difficulty thing. Games, because of modern conveniences, tend to be a little bit easier, and because of the more role-playing elements, and we'll hit on this when we get to Final Fantasy X, it makes it easier to play the games in the way that you want to play them, and which makes it harder for you to die, because when you're playing in a play style that fits you, it's harder to lose. But yeah.
They didn't release Final Fantasy V in America or Europe. It was a Japan-only release for several years because Nintendo of America felt it was too hard. And that was really the reason why they didn't port it over. So we didn't get Final Fantasy V until I think it was released on the PlayStation 1 as part of the Anthology collection.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I really like Final Fantasy V. I think the soundtrack's really underrated as well. But this game really forces you into experimenting with the different jobs. You can't go through this game just picking one or two jobs. You've really got to use a good sizable chunk of them. Right, Final Fantasy VI.
S tier straight away. It is the perfect blend of story and gameplay. There are so many challenges you can set yourself if you want to. There are so many ways you can play the game if you want to. You can make all your characters god level if you want to, and it's not even exactly hard if you wanted to do that. And on top of that, things like story beats, where it's like a lot of the story, not too much of the story, but there's so many extra bits and pieces of the story are there if you talk to the NPCs. You get so much from it just by talking to people. And this game has 3 fake out endings.
Yeah.
Like 3. Like you get to like the island in the sky where it's like, oh, that's an end level.
Or the floating continent, yeah.
Floating continent, sorry. You get floating continent, that's an end level, but it's not. Then you get the world of ruin. It's like, and then you get Kefka's tower. Kefka is basically the Joker.
Kefka, sorry to interject, I feel like I said Kefka is one of the greatest video game villains of all time.
Oh yeah, he's the Joker if the Joker had magic powers.
Yeah,
that's exactly who he is.
And he wins. He
He
wins.
wins. He ruins the world.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that they can fix the planet after they've got the buffer. It's
basically
like
the second half of Final Fantasy VI, because, I mean, you can argue Terra, Locke, and Celeste are sort of share the main character mantle between the three of them, but there's no real main character in this game. There's no Cloud Strife, there's no Cecil, there's no Squall or anything like that, because you can really pick whoever you want in your party at more or less any time, especially at the second half of the game in the world of Ruin, where like, the game randomly starts you off as playing Celeste, and you have to go around the planet and recruit all your party members. No matter what we do, we just have to beat Kefka.
It's like the music is perfect.
Oh,
the story is
amazing soundtrack.
The story's not 100% perfect. I'm sure there's ways you could make it better because of the time period and everything. But at the same time, it's a hard argument to say that the story of Final Fantasy VI is bad in any way, really, isn't it?
And it's the way you can. I mean, it has so much replayability as well. I've completed it so many times, and every time I go and face Kefka's Tower, I'm always swapping the parties around. I'm always experimenting in my head canon. Okay, so for this playthrough, I'm going to try and make Terra the main character, and then and then when I play it through again, I'm going to try and push Terra as the main character, but Locke and Celeste are going to be playing a major part in it. It's just, the game is so customizable in that way. I think it's the biggest squad of characters in Final Fantasy history. There's like 14 characters you can choose.
14 characters, 2 of them are optional ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, even then, there's still 14 characters you can pick from.
Yeah. It's just such an amazing game. You know, with the backing of an incredible soundtrack. That ending to this day still gives me goosebumps with the way the music builds and builds and builds and builds, and Terra takes her hairband off and her hair's, you know, blowing in, you know, on the airship, and then it just takes off into the sky. It's just perfect. Just an amazing game. S rank, that's the end of it. We have to move on, or else it will become a Final Fantasy VI retrospective video.
Yeah.
Okay. Final Fantasy VII. Now, I bet Square couldn't believe their luck. They finished one masterpiece of a game, followed by another masterpiece, and it ended up becoming their biggest game of all time. I mean, I have to put it in S rank. To me, it's one of the greatest games of all time. It was my introduction to the series. I love playing it to this day. It's such an important game for me, because to me, the theme of Final Fantasy VII is more about like accepting loss, and how you deal with losing somebody you love. Like we all go through it in our lives. Like if we take the death of Aerith, for example, or Aerith, depending on your preference, even after she dies, they purposely leave a gap. And so if you go into the PHS to swap party members around, there is always that gap there. The game is constantly reminding you that she is gone.
Yeah.
She is by far the best magic user in that game. But after she's gone, you have to share that burden amongst the other party members.
Even if you don't like her as a storyteller.
And the game somewhat sort of teases you that she could potentially come back, but she never does come back. And you just have to accept the fact that she isn't coming back. And it's the same with when you lose a family member or a friend, you know, because, you know, when Hironobu Sakaguchi came up with the story of Final Fantasy VII, he was dealing with the loss of his mother. Tifa lost her father. You know, Tifa and Cloud, they lost their homes, their family. All they have really is each other. Barrett had to accept the loss of his hometown and his friend and his wife. Sid, you know, had this whole idea of, you know, traveling into space taken away from him. Vincent had, you know, he was in love with Sephiroth's biological mother, who actually gave birth to Sephiroth. But
Lucretia,
however you pronounce it.
I'm not sure you pronounce it, but it's got like a weird C in it or something like that.
And he basically spent a good chunk of his life basically asleep in a coffin in the Nibelheim basement. So he suffered loss. Red 13, I mean, that scene where he goes to Cosmo Canyon and he realizes that, he thought his father was a coward, and then he realizes he's the bravest sod, in the
Bravest one out of all of
the
them.
bravest one out of all of them.
He
Yeah.
fought an army on his own.
Yeah, and it's all about accepting that and moving on from it. I will say this: if Aerith ends up living by the end of that remake, to me, it's almost a complete and utter failure and betrayal of the story and the theme of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
It just isn't. It just doesn't sit well.
Well, at that point. Yeah, I'll agree. S rank. I'd agree. Is it F rank?
Do we want to review the ranking list? I can tell you what I personally think. I think, considering what we've just said about Final Fantasy VII and VI, I think 4 should drop down to A rank, and I do think 3. I mean, 3 can stay where it is, but I personally would drop it down to C rank, but above Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah, go for it.
Right, now Final Fantasy VIII. Don't say anything. I'm going to put it where I think it should go, and I want you to give me your immediate reaction to it.
See, I have 2 arguments about Final Fantasy VIII why it's not good. But
oh no, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of reasons. There are plenty of reasons not to like Final Fantasy VIII.
Other than those 2 reasons, I can't think of a good one for why it's not. So I'll give you my 2 reasons.
Oh, go on then.
The first reason is the biggest and most obvious one, the draw system.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a gameplay mechanic that was, while I'm sure on paper it looked like a really, really good idea,
yeah,
it was really not implemented very well. It's like, when you've got to draw 100 of a spell from something, so you have 100 of them so you can use them, and then you can combine that with your stats. It's kind of like, that sounds like a really cool idea. But with how they did it, it's just basically you've got, wow, I'm spending 15, 20 minutes trying to draw scan from this one bug. It's not interesting. I know there are easier ways to do it.
Yeah,
I know there's easier to get those spells.
You can mod cards and modify items and stuff.
Exactly. Like, but when you're going into that level of detail just to improve your stats by like 5 to 10 points, it's like there's an issue there, and that needs to be addressed. And if you haven't addressed it, you've messed up. My second point is a story point. The story is almost a perfect time loop with one exception. And I'm sure you can probably guess this. I can see you nodding, so I can.
Do you subscribe to the Squirrel's Dead theory?
No.
No, neither do I.
It's the fucking basketball orphanage scene at the end of.
Oh yeah, no, that is bad. I love Final Fantasy VIII. I have a ton of nostalgia for it. I simply cannot defend that moment in the game.
If it was, say, Cypher and Squall were the only 2 who went to the orphanage with Idea, the matron.
Yeah.
You could kind of just about sell it, but at the same time...
For those of you who don't know, all the characters you play in this game all happen to go to the same orphanage. They all knew each other. They all end up finding each other again and form this party of characters again. But they have memory loss. They literally forgot that they were at that orphanage. And it's because of
the Guardian Forces.
Guardian Forces, yeah. If you use summons in this game, it basically erases parts of your memory if you basically overdose on them. I fully understand why people do not like this game. That being said, I love it. I don't know why, it just makes me happy playing it. I know it's a very, very, very flawed game. If I had to be completely impartial, I'd probably put it in the B rank, but I just have so many good memories with this game. I think the soundtrack's amazing. The soundtrack is one of the best in the series.
And again, things like the card game was perfect in Final Fantasy VIII.
Oh, Triple Pride was awesome. But no, I mean, Jack, if you want to drop it down from A rank, I'm not going to argue with you. If this was my personal ranking, obviously we want to try and find a middle ground here. I would keep it in A rank because I like I said, I totally understand why people do not like this game, but I really, really like it.
Keep it A rank, but put it behind Final Fantasy IV.
All right, then I'll go with that. Okay.
Mm.
Right, Jack. So, what's the best Final Fantasy game, and why is it Final Fantasy IX?
Because Final Fantasy IX is perfect in every way, and you damn well know it.
Final Fantasy X. I'm gonna. Do you want me to put it where I think it should go again? In my personal opinion.
Let's do that. Let's put it where you think it should go, and I can tell you why you're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong.
Yo, really? I love Final Fantasy X.
Final Fantasy X is basically for myself personally, that top level of where you can do customization without it getting too strange with the sphere grid and how you could do all that. So for gameplay, it worked really, really well.
To me, Final Fantasy X, it has probably the best battle system in any of the Final Fantasy games.
I'll agree with that, definitely.
Yeah, I think the way you can control Aeons or summons, whatever you want to call them, in this game is probably the best. Overall, I think the story is very good. I think the whole Tidus being a dream or not existing thing is a little bit out there. I much prefer it if it was just Spira being caught in this endless cycle of death. Summoners are being sacrificed to get 10 years of peace, and then it starts again. And this, the whole concept of we have to break this cycle. This has been going on for 1,000 years now, and no matter what we do, no matter how much we feel like we have to repent for this religion, it has a lot more emotional weight behind it. I think it's one of the better love stories that's told in this game as well. Considering like the sort of pressure that Yuna's under, like when you go back, I think if Final Fantasy X is a game you appreciate more the second time because you have that knowledge that Yuna knows she's dying. She's taking more time to, she just goes out on her own and just looks at the sunset. She takes her time in Besaid before she leaves. And you know why she's doing that the second time, because she knows she's eventually going to her death. And there's no guarantee that she'll even get to doing the final summon because the pilgrimage is so perilous. Because Tidus isn't from the world of Spira. He as far as he's aware, he's grown up in Zanarkand, and he just thinks this is all a load of baloney. If Spira, if you destroy Sin, but it comes back in 10 years, then clearly that's not working. Why don't we try something different? And it's because of him constantly challenging the status quo, where the others in the party are a bit like, yeah, maybe we should do that. And then they all come on board with that in the end. And it's actually my favorite soundtrack in the entire series as well.
The thing is, they'd asked him to do Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, and then Final Fantasy IX, basically on the trot. That's like within something like 4 to 5 years, he did 3 games worth of music, which
like 100+ tracks he had to write in a short
time. It's a lot of work for one person. It's insane. And yeah, no wonder he was like, thank you, but no, not anymore. And it's like, fair enough.
The way I would sum up 10-2, it's a pretty meh story, but has great gameplay because they introduced the job system again.
10-2 would probably be D or E if it was on its own. But as a continuation of 10, I would fit it in B rank. But literally, I would say it is based on the fact that it rides the coattails of 10 a little bit. Because you've got two moments in that game that stick out for me, and they're the obvious two. The beginning, which is the "What Can I Do For You" song.
I love how Final Fantasy X starts off with a civilization being wiped out, and 10-2 starts off with a pop concert. So that'll give you an insight into the tone difference between the two games.
Oh yeah, it's like it's 2 years later, but everyone's up for pop concerts. Who cares about the fact that 2 years ago everyone was being genocided by a giant monster? It's okay now.
What can I do for you? Yeah. And you chase. I think her name's LeBlanc. She steals like a sphere grid or something like that.
Yeah, she steals a sphere. She steals the dress sphere from Una, but it makes her look exactly like Una, even though it doesn't work for anyone else like that.
Yeah.
Just works for her like that. Because the world of 10 is quite dire, and world of 10-2 is a little bit too upbeat. It doesn't quite work so well. But even then, I'm not going to argue that 10-2 should be in B. But if it was on its own, it'd probably be lower. And even then, it's kind of like the opening was amazing. is I can't see anyone not just smiling when that opening is playing. And the whole Thousand Worlds bit, Thousand
Words. That's in the Thunder Plains.
That's in the Thunder Plane. When you get the revelation of exactly, you get the backstory of what happened that caused 10 to happen in the first place. It works because of that.
I don't hate it. I couldn't have hated it. I've completed it around about 3 times. Twice on the PS2 and once with the HD remaster. So I obviously like it enough to play it at least 3 times. But Final Fantasy X, why don't we compromise and drop it down into A rank?
Top of A rank is fine.
Okay, and Final Fantasy X to B rank. Okay, Final Fantasy 12. I actually hated it. I'll flat out say that. I really did not like Final Fantasy 12 when it first came out. And I didn't play it for years. They then re-released Final Fantasy 12, the Zodiac Age, where they basically tweaked the mechanics, etc., and gave it a HD facelift, etc. It's now one of my favorite games in the franchise, to the point where I don't know why I hated it. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, that you can nitpick at it, but I think Final Fantasy 12, at least the Zodiac Age version of it, I think the voice acting is incredible. I love the world. I think the game mechanics are fantastic. I mean, there's so much to do in this game. I've grown to love the Gambit system as well, which once I fully understood how to use is incredible. I would probably put it in A rank personally.
I'd agree with that.
I mean, me and my brother were also talking about this the other day. Actually, we were talking about like how amazing the art direction is for Final Fantasy 12 as well. It's amazing art direction. Like the
Moogles had a very different look, didn't they?
I just think it looks incredible.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously, everyone likes to crap on Varn and Pinello because they really are totally inconsequential to the overall plot. But I love...
yes, Varn not so much. But...
Yeah, no, definitely. But I love Balthier. I love Bosch. I really like Ash. I actually really like the tutorial section of that game as well, because you grow to sort of like that character you're controlling at the beginning. Yeah, Varn's brother.
Vex. Rex. R-E-C-K-H. R-E-C-K-S or something. Rex.
Yeah. And the game, I would probably put it there, below Final Fantasy X, but above 4 and 8, personally.
I'd keep it in A, but I'd have 4 above 12.
You put 4 above 12. I mean, I can live with that.
I think the story of 4 is just that little bit stronger than 12.
No, true. And considering when it was released as well, 4 was a really big deal, story-wise.
So beyond that, I'm happy with that. Revenant Wings, Final Fantasy 12, Revenant Wings. This is very much a game where it's kind of, you remember from Final Fantasy 7 where you did the Condor Fortress?
Oh yeah.
And you had to like put groups of soldiers in various places.
It sucked.
Yeah, that's what this game is all the way through. But the difference is
that sounds horrific.
It sounds horrific, but it's actually got a relatively good story.
Oh really? Okay, fair enough then.
And it's kind of like a follow-up, but it's kind of, the idea is this is what Varn and Pinello did next, like about a year after.
Oh really? Oh, so is it a sequel?
It's a sequel, and it's kind of like it follows up those bits and pieces, because the big problem for Final Fantasy 12 is that they must have run out of time and money, because they literally dropped off a cliff at that last sort of like 10th of the game.
A lot of Final Fantasy games suffer from that, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, it becomes more obvious in Final Fantasy 12 after. And Revenant Wings was kind of not their way of fixing that, but it's a new game that kind of took what they were kind of wanted to do, and then loads of extra stuff on top of that. Don't get me wrong, this game is not good. This is D rank. This is not better than that. It's a very much let's put things in place and wait for things to march into it, or march them into them and see what happens. And because you haven't played it, it strictly should go into non-applicable. But because I've played it and I've got voices, I've got opinions on it, that's why it's in the ranking to begin with. So it's either D or non-applicable. Your choice.
I mean, I personally haven't played it, so I can't give an opinion on it. If it's
Non-applicable, then.
So should we put it in non-applicable?
Stick it in non-applicable.
But if it was your own personal one, you would probably put it in D rank.
I'd put it in D, below 2.
Okay, Final Fantasy 13. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I hate this game.
My least favourite of all of them, so that's
mine as well. I mean, people may be shocked I put it lower than 2, but at least 2's somewhat mercifully short, and it was released in the late 80s. To me, Final Fantasy 13 is. I mean, I could be here all night talking about how much I don't like it, but I don't like any of the characters. I don't like the world. I'm not a huge fan of the art direction. I don't like the battle system at all. The game basically plays itself. To say it's linear is an understatement. And the fact that it spawned 2 sequels after it, I mean, I don't know why. To me, Final Fantasy 13, I haven't met a single person, I know quite a lot of people who play Final Fantasy games, that has said Final Fantasy 13 is a good game. I tried playing it again on the PC because I got it on PS3, then I tried playing it on PC. I got around about a third of the way in and I remembered very quickly why I did not like the game. I cannot put it any higher than E rank. I've heard some people argue Final Fantasy 13-2 is an improvement, but I've played it. I haven't played it enough to really give it an official ranking, but I've played Final Fantasy 13 enough to know that it is by far my least favorite game in terms of like the main franchise releases, in terms of the numerical releases. It's by far my least favorite.
Very much agreed. Moving on.
Okay, so Final Fantasy 15. Now, you recently completed this game. I am shocked it is as good as it is, considering the development hell it went through.
It took 10 years to make it and got rewritten completely in its entirety at least once.
Yeah.
This game hinges on how you feel about the 4 main characters, because there's only 4 characters in the game.
That, to me, was arguably the best part of the game.
Oh, by miles. This game is, in terms of how this ranking works, it depends entirely on how you feel about those 4 characters.
I liked all the characters. But when you have them all together, they all interact with each other incredibly well. The love story I couldn't care less about. I was like, get this out of my game. I have no interest in it. But the dynamic of those 4 guys in that team, I really thought it was. I thought it was really strong. It
was really strong. But then you got incidents like Ignis losing the ability to see, which is covered in the DLC, not in the main game. Then Prompto being kidnapped and the reveal that he's a Magitech soldier, which, again, not covered in the main game. Well, very, very briefly covered in the main game, predominantly covered in the DLC.
Yeah.
Things like that should have been in the main game.
You have to play a lot of DLC in this game to fully understand the backstory.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, I shouldn't have to go and buy or play DLC for the main game to make sense.
Oh, I agree.
Things like the combat and the story, I'm enjoying those, but like Kingsglaive as a movie, as a separate movie.
Never watched it.
It's all right, but it only makes sense if you play the game.
Isn't Sean Bean in that? Bastard. Or voicing one of the characters.
He's playing the king, even though he's not playing the king in the game, which is like a weird thing to do, but okay. You got Sean Bean. What he's going to do is record like 6 extra lines. You could put him in the main game. He's just recorded a movie for you. Come on, Sean Bean.
Like, did you know Final Fantasy VII remakes all the rage? Imagine they got Sean Bean to like voice Sephiroth or someone like that. Bastard. How weird would that be? We're going to take over the planet, bastard.
I'm gonna find you over.
Move, you bastard!
Oh my god, I love it. See,
Whoever's
that's gonna
voicing Sephiroth, sack him and get Sean Bean in. So where do you think Final Fantasy 15 goes in the ranking?
for me, it's searing because it's like, okay, here's the thing that broke me in my brain. There's a boss rush at the end in the last chapter, which has all the main characters basically. You get to take control of each each one of the party.
Yeah.
And not just Noctis, and they all get like a few lines there about how they're all going to be together as friends, together as brothers, as a team, however you want to call it. And that's not in the original version. It basically solidifies the entire point of the game, and it's not there unless you're playing. It's like a boss rush moment. You've got like 3 bosses in a row. But when you do your final move on each boss, you get this from a different character. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you don't get this unless it's the Windows version.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because that's the version I got it on PS4, but I never actually played that version. But I eventually got it on PC, which was the Windows edition. That's the version I played.
Look, I get... Every now and again, games will come out and they're going to be on multi-platform. And it's like, haha, if you get this version of the game, you'll get this. If you get this version of the game, you get this. You get this version of the game, you get this. Okay, but usually it's for like an extra weapon or an extra piece of armor. This is main story stuff. This is stuff that is part of the main game. It's like you cannot remove these things. And you're cutting out at the end, whether it's because of time or energy, or you just want to sell it as DLC, or it's just cut out for the Windows version because you want to sell Windows versions of the game. You're cutting out this one last bit, which is just one of their last little moments. Not the very last moment, because the last moment's a photograph at the very end.
Yeah.
But you're cutting out one of these big moments for them, where they're all kind of banding together and being a team, and it's just like you're failing. And I want to be more pleasant about it, because there's so much I do like in this game. It's either very top of C rank or very bottom of B rank. It cannot be higher. So that was the listing for what we've done here. If you have any opinions about what you like and dislike, stick it in the comment section, because it's always interesting to know. And we'll go from there. So anything from yourself, Tom?
No, just thank you everybody for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. Like Jack said, if you've got any opinions or you agree with us or disagree with us, let us know in the comment section, and jump on a live stream with us at some point and we can discuss it further. And I think when Final Fantasy 16 comes out, me and Jack may or may not revisit this tier list, or just talk about just Final Fantasy 16, or we may go more in depth into the game, certainly those that made the S rank, and talk about why we love them so much, because there's just not enough time in one video to talk about them, especially in the context of a tier list.
So that's where we are. So you guys have a good night, and we'll see you later on.
Take care, guys. Have a good night.